I was born in Tashkent in 1981. Now I'm 37 and I lived in Uzbekistan until I turned 29. After finishing school, I immediately entered a medical university and was determined to become a doctor. I started studying foreign languages at university. I successively learned the English, Uzbek and Korean languages because I needed to speak them to be able to work for an international South Korean clinic after university graduation. My basic knowledge of medicine helped me a lot because as a doctor I could roughly picture how a child and adult's brains worked and how people in general learned languages. I mean, if we hear that a person doesn't have skills needed for studying foreign languages, we shouldn't believe it, because even your native language you speak now was foreign for you when you were born. In spite of this, you did learn it. It means that you have basic skills needed to learn languages. Keeping this in mind, I addressed a question as to why I speak Russian, my first language. It helped me realize that there were three main theses. The first one is a complete knowledge of the basic grammar of the Russian language. The second is the phonetic structure of the language. Right now, I'm not speaking to you the same way I write. I'm speaking very quickly, slurring my words because I know how to link words together. While similar processes happen in the phonetic structures of both Russian and English, I know how sounds are reduced and how to omit letters. For example, instead of saying "что," which means what in Russian, I say "что," "sho" or "cho." This happens in accordance with some basic phonetic rules typical of the native language. The third thesis is basic words, which are the minimum of the most common words we use in everyday life. Both a highly educated person and poorly educated one who neglected their studies speak the same Russian language. Or basic Kazakh. In this case, we all do it. As for the basic word list, it doesn't contain more than 1,000 or even 500 words. It turns out that in general plenty of linguistic systems, that is to say foreign language studies and modern frequency dictionaries, are based on this principle. Actually, the society in our country has divided on the basis of language into two groups. They are a Kazakh-speaking group and Russian-speaking one, and these two groups do not coexist very well. Why not? Because, for example, the Kazakh-speaking Kazakhs say "Kazakhsha söyle," "Kazakh yemesimba," which translates as "Speak Kazakh, aren't you Kazakh?" Then you say to them, "I'm sorry, but we were born in the Soviet period of the dominance, when the Russian language was dominant and whatnot. We did learn the Russian language. Why can't you learn the Kazakh language now?" Well, we shouldn't forget that the Russian language wasn't… Okay, besides some political and historical causes of the introduction of Russian, there was an incredibly large amount of the content, the information content. Even now it prevails over Kazakh. If we translated and dubbed all the serials, films and cartoons into the Kazakh language, then situation would be much better. Of course, a person can learn a language if they have a motivating factor. Another factor is respect and love. The first language I learned was English, and I was about 21 to 22 years old when I did it. When I started wondering how I learned the language, which wasn't spoken in this country, and why I still couldn't understand the Uzbek language spoken by people around me. Thinking about it, I realized that I completely disregarded the Uzbek language and didn't pay much attention to the Uzbek people, because I had a bit different ideological principles. Then I realized that I should change my mental attitude. As a result, I wanted to make friends with the Uzbeks and wanted to understand their culture. It means I had a wish to become close to them, which hadn't happened before because the Russian-speaking community had been enough for me, and I had been absorbed in it. I took these steps, approached the Uzbeks and started to like Uzbek people even more. My parents moved to Kazakhstan, to Astana to be exact, before I did. Although I have a sister, as a only son I had to be with them. Well, I wanted to be with my parents. Thus, family factor was one of the reasons why I moved to Astana. Here I started to develop myself in a different way. On arriving here, first of all, I wanted to learn the Kazakh language, because I knew that if I wished to integrate with them, easier to achieve this aim speaking the language. I didn't know anything about Kazakhstan. The only thing I knew was that the country was our northern neighbor. I had always thought that the Kazakhs spoke Kazakh and the Uzbeks spoke Uzbek. I hadn't known that the Kazakhs had some language problem. Well, you have it, especially in the north. I thought I would just read a good textbook quickly. I knew that the grammar rules of the both languages were quite similar. If the Uzbeks used only lia ending, the Kazakhs did la and le, tar and ter, and dar and der. I thought I would be able to acquire it gradually with some practice. However, practice didn't help me because I didn't have it. The reason why I couldn't have any practice was because when you hadn't been good at Kazakh yet, you went outside, hailed a taxi and tried to talk to a taxi driver or a passerby on the street. You can try to say something in Kazakh, but if you fail, the Kazakhs say, "Speak Russian." It means they don't help you learn the language. They don't say, "Come on, try again. We'll try to understand you." It doesn't happen. Since it was easier to speak Russian, I didn't improve my language knowledge. It continued until 2017. In 2017, I had various occupations, including work in the medical field here. And it was the year when I decided to study languages properly. I had to find a way to stand out and realized I could learn the Kazakh language quickly, because it was technically simple. I learned the Kazakh language without teachers and linguistic environment. The special feature of what I do is learning a language without linguistic environment. If you are a real patriot, make friends with a Russian-speaking person. Spend a year with them, speak Kazakh with them and teach them Kazakh. We all should think so, but it's easier for us to blame the government saying something like they don't develop Kazakh and aren't fluent themselves. It's the easiest way because we don't want to start with ourselves. For example, I don't wait when they'll teach my children Kazakh, but teach them myself. It's my point of view. Some famous professors ask, how can you manage to teach Kazakh? I answer that I have a team of native Kazakh-speaking teachers. Often native speakers, particularly native Kazakh speakers who are mainly ethnic Kazakhs, speaking their first language fluently, cannot imagine not speaking Kazakh. The notion of not speaking the Kazakh language is alien to them. They have no idea why some people would have problems with using some language structures the native speakers find extremely simple. They just can't understand it. You can involve logic by training a person's brain. If you train their brain and help them follow logic, then they won't need a lot of homework because you are conceptually planted a seed in them, and it will remain with them for good. Tomorrow you will plant another seed. Do one more day after tomorrow, and in this way you'll teach them a language. After that, they will be able to communicate easily with native speakers. Any language of the world can be taught in this way. Today, Korean is an integral part of my social movement too. Actually, I want to develop a school, my online Korean language school. I want to teach the Korean language to Koreans in a new way. I intend to teach the Korean language to local Koreans. We need to be honest with each other. We all want to make money. I quit medicine because I saw no prospect of earning enough money in the near future. I needed money because I wanted another child. You know, having children is often considered costly now, in case we are responsible parents and plan to have a baby. I became a doctor because, first of all, I wanted to help people. Even when I worked as a doctor, I realized I had some teaching skills. For example, I even drew a stomach ulcer and explained everything about it. I said what would happen if a patient drank alcohol or smoked, and explained how effective a certain medicine was. I was suggested that a patient should be explained everything, and then it would be easier for them to deal with their illness. I don't know who suggested that to me, probably it was God. Now the same happens with languages. I have a big audience, not just Russian-speaking audience, but ethnic Kazakhs who aren't fluent in their native language. It's easier for them to come to me without being ashamed because they know that Vlad will never be arrogant with them. Of course, it's an essential mission because, you know, I understood that I couldn't live simply like that. I had to give something to the country, to this land. You know, many people comment on my posts on the internet, and their comments are so incisive that it seems an old person wrote them. You have 2 arms, 2 legs, 2 eyes, 2 ears, and they all are in the right place. You have a head on your shoulders, and what are you complaining about in this life? All you should complain about is your laziness. I focus on my children, my wife and my parents. Family must always take a central position. When you focus on your family, then you're able to make contributions to the society. It's my point of view. I think family is the most important. A person is supposed to have economic benefit, otherwise they don't work effectively. We don't submerge into spirituality. After all, we do not preach here. In principle, no one denies God and the fact that doing good deeds you remain human, and as a result you'll be rewarded. In general, we all must understand these universal human principles and follow them. If you do it, your children will see it and live in the same way. As a rule, we want our children to treat us with respect. But what about you? Do you show your parents respect? Your children will see how you treat your parents, and later they will treat you in the same way. No one knows that I can go to my father in evenings. We can work there in the vegetable garden where tomatoes and cucumbers grow. There's no difference between us. Regardless of who you are, you must do it. Must do. My achievements in the field of language studying and teaching have nothing to do with talent. They are the result of my work, ordinary work of a person. They are like the very tomatoes and cucumbers, but in the intellectual sphere. I'm nearly 40, and a lot of people of the same age, like my older friends who are 45, complain that their brains don't work well. When I was 20, my own brain worked worse than it does now at the age of 40. It means that learning languages stimulates my intellectual development. I don't need intellect to show off saying how clever I am. Our intellect should serve only one purpose, which is helping others. For instance, a real doctor, highly professional one, is very intellectual because if they don't help others, what will they need their intellect for? Animals live by instinct, while we've become ascetics. We wear clothes. If we are hungry, we don't eat immediately. If we want to relieve ourselves, we do it later. An animal never waits if it needs something right now. This is our distinguishing feature, which makes us human. However, sometimes we need to learn from animals how they take care of their chicks and pups. Well, we are human if we help other people become human.